Did you know that Paul, the apostle to the Gentiles, had another lesser-known ministry? Yes, he was called by God to deliver the life-changing message of the gospel to Gentiles around the world. But while he traveled delivering the gospel message, he had a second ministry that we read about in Scripture. When James, Peter, and John were commissioning Paul and Barnabas to go out to the Gentiles, they referred to another ministry of Paul's. We find it recorded in the book of Galatians. And when James and Cephas and John, who seemed to be pillars, perceived the grace that was given to me, they gave the right hand of fellowship to Barnabas and me, that we should go to the Gentiles and they to the circumcised. Only they asked us to remember the poor, the very thing I was eager to do. Notice that when they gave Paul their blessing to go to the Gentiles, they asked them to remember the poor. Now, who exactly is this group of people, the poor? We get another clue in Paul's first letter to the church in Corinth. 1 Corinthians chapter 16 says, "Now, concerning the collection for the saints, as I directed the churches of Galatia, so you also are to do. On the first day of every week, each of you is to put something aside and store it up as he may prosper, so that there will be no collecting when I come. And when I arrive, I will send those whom you accredit by letter to carry your gift to Jerusalem." Here we see that Paul is preparing the believers in Corinth, that is, in the region of Achaia, to set aside a financial offering once per week to send to Jerusalem. Not only the believers in Achaia, but also he's directed the churches of Galatia to do the same. Paul is traveling on his missionary journeys, not only to deposit the gospel and encourage churches, but also to gather a financial offering that is to be sent to Jerusalem. Paul writes to the Corinthians about his offering again in the second letter. 2 Corinthians chapters 8 and 9 are exclusively dedicated to talking about this offering, but I'll just highlight a few of those verses here. "We want you to know, brothers, about the grace of God that has been given among the churches of Macedonia. For in a severe test of affliction, their abundance of joy and their extreme poverty have overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part. For they gave according to their means, as I can testify, and beyond their means of their own accord, begging us earnestly for the favor of taking part in the relief of the saints." Paul's second ministry is really beginning to take form in our understanding now. It's safe to conclude that this ministry is global. So far, we've learned that the churches from the provinces of Galatia, Achaia, and Macedonia are all involved in this global offering. We also know that this offering is for the poor in Jerusalem, but now we see that it's not just for the poor in general, but for the poor among the saints. The word saints here might not be a word we use a lot today. It simply refers to those Jews who profess faith in Yeshua, in Jesus as Messiah. Today we call them Messianic Jews. It is also important to point out here that not only is this offering for the poor Messianic Jews in Israel, but poor people in Macedonia gave in spite of their own poverty. He said in verse 2 that the churches of Macedonia gave even though they were experiencing extreme poverty. They begged Paul for the favor of giving to the Messianic Jews. Now, if the whole purpose was to give to the poor, why would impoverished believers in Macedonia be so eager to give themselves? Well, to answer that, we turn finally to Romans chapter 15. It says, "At present, however, I am going to Jerusalem bringing aid to the saints. For Macedonia and Achaia have been pleased to make some contribution for the poor among the saints at Jerusalem." Here we see the entire ordeal brought together, right? Paul is returning to Jerusalem to take the aid for the poor among the Messianic Jews in Jerusalem. And now he goes on in verse 27 to make a statement that we should all pay close attention to. He says, "For they were pleased to do it, and indeed they owe it to them. For if the Gentiles have come to share in their spiritual blessings, they ought also to be of service to them in material blessings. Here, Paul, the apostle to the Gentiles, explains exactly why he's gone through the trouble of raising this offering. If Gentiles have received spiritual blessings from God through the Jews, then in turn, he says, the Gentiles owe it to the Jews who profess faith in Yeshua, in Jesus, as Messiah, to bless them financially. This was Paul's other ministry. So what is our big takeaway? We should thank God that He has blessed us with the truth of the gospel and that He shared that truth with the world through Israel, the people He chose to carry His covenants and His blessings, the people that He chose to send the Messiah through. We should also allow the Lord to in turn bless the Messianic Jewish community through us. That is, blessing those Jews who believe and are boldly proclaiming the truth of the gospel that Yeshua is indeed Lord and Messiah. We can support them to do the work of the ministry with our financial offerings. I encourage you to partner with Lifting Up Zion today as we support the Messianic Jewish community in prayer and in finances to see all of Israel saved.